I guess this right here is the short heard around the world.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd
Biden
J.
was out of it. He went out and he told reporters after the meeting that the meeting was, quote, the best yet. We're making progress, and I'm going to be talking to Joe Biden every day. Very professional, very smart, very tough. I don't even know what to say. I really don't even know what to say.
Kind of embarrassing considering the fact that it was D-Day. You were in France, right there at Normandy, where our men landed to liberate Europe during World War II from the Nazis. You know, the same people that, you know, they keep saying are so daggone bad, which, by the way, they were. I need to go ahead and say that right now, just for political points, because obviously every time you decide to disagree with the narrative, you suddenly become a Nazi. But still, the point is this right here. Still very, very quiet, still very, very embarrassing, especially given the moment, given the occasion. And of course, there's also this little bit here that I'm showing you guys in the B-roll footage of Joe, like, how do I say, just walking away with Jill. And I'll tell you what I think happened in this video. But also, there's a lot of implications to this that a lot of people are not exactly talking about, or maybe people are just now getting around to. But still, though, Macron, not really a fan of Macron. I'm not. But still, at the same time, when you want to maintain some form of strength or unity, it's not exactly the best look in the world to then let him go shake hands with our guys. Not saying he's not allowed to, just simply saying this quite symbolic because obviously some people overseas, which, by the way, most of them, of course, are allies, or they claim to be allies, but in reality, they're really freeloaders, are now kind of left on their own. Makes you wonder if they actually wanted it this way. Makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, they did not want to pay their fair share when it came to overall support of the region. Because every time I turn around, we got to constantly hear about NATO. We got to constantly hear about allies. Of course, allies who, by the way, don't exactly, how do I say, kick in what they need to kick in. And I'm not saying that to blast our allies or anything. I'm just simply saying that it's quite symbolic. And it even gets a lot worse when you see this guy and you see him step outside this SUV or be right outside the SUV. And of course, he doesn't seem to know where the hell he is. I'll play the clip. Then there's also this little dandy too.
They've inflicted on the Russian aggressors, they've suffered tremendous losses, Russia. The numbers are staggering. 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded.
Over 350,000 Russians killed, supposedly. Does anybody believe these figures? Now, guys, I know that I kind of ranted and raved about the chart, about the theory that Joe may have pooped himself, even though it was obviously trending pretty much throughout the entire day. I think it's probably still trending as I'm actually recording this video. But the point is this right here. This video right here is going to contain a lot. We're going to talk a little bit about this Wall Street Journal article that came out. And of course, we're also going to be talking about not only the Wall Street Journal article that came out, but this little topic about Joe's fitness and of course, what's actually going on between Russia and Ukraine, a topic that I have not really touched on this channel that often, but still, we're going to be revisiting a lot of things. Hopefully, we can get this video done very, very concisely and get straight to the point. With that out of the way, now let's go ahead and get into it. So, there was this article that was released by the Wall Street Journal. And of course, you guys probably caught it at the very, very beginning that MSNBC, MSDNC is not exactly okay with this. And of course, they're going out of their way to run cover for the Biden administration. However, leave it to Fox News to get a compilation of what was actually said on the network shortly after this Wall Street article was released.
Basically, House Republicans whacking.
Why didn't they just ask Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Well, exactly. Why did?
You just can't say it on the air what your reaction is actually. But you know, I am sort of actually embarrassed for the Wall Street Journal. This piece is so tilted, so off the mark. Is he 81 years old? Yes. Is he a bit slower in terms of his reactions to some things? Probably.
It does feel like this is a moment here with Trump reeling after the verdict, and we wait to see how that's going to play out, that it's Republicans trying to revive what they think could be an effective story.
Article, my bad. But still, here's basically what the article suggests. The article suggests that Republicans and Democrats alike have been actually leaking bits of information out to the press about Joe Biden's current fitness. And of course, Morning Joe, they obviously got pissed off and upset about this and basically claimed that, Kevin McCarthy, he is the guy who would tell people privately that Biden was actually fit, he was mentally there, and then he would turn it back around publicly and say that he was not there, all the type of good stuff that you would normally hear when it comes to MSDNC. Which, of course, we're going to react to some of this right now here in a second. But there's also one more thing that I need to go ahead and note. One of the things about this Russia-Ukraine situation is that they keep thinking that Russia is ultimately going to try to invade Europe. Now, with Putin going into Ukraine, you might think that that's the case. However, a lot of the areas that Putin has gone into are areas that are actually pro-Russian. The Donbass, Donetsk, of course, Crimea, over the years. Of course, this whole thing really kind of snowballed under Obama. Because if you guys remember correctly, when Obama was president, that right there is when Putin got the gall to go into the Crimea. You could argue that it happened before that. You could argue that Bush, not exactly making Putin an ally or anything like that, or at least keeping a friendly relationship with him, you could argue that that's the case. You could argue that Clinton, of course, basically denying Putin or Russia's ability to go into NATO or join NATO. You could throw that in as well, too. But, of course, the ball itself really truly got going the minute that Obama showed some weakness. And, of course, Putin went inside the Crimea. You could also argue that Obama showed a lot of weakness when he said that Syria, it would be a red line if Syria used chemical weapons, but then Syria turned right back around after that and then used chemical weapons. You could also argue that, too. This right here with the Biden administration, in my personal opinion, is just another extension of exactly how weak the Obama administration was going to be if left unchecked. And by unchecked, I mean with Hillary Clinton in office and more Democrats. Democrats typically tend to be a lot worse when it comes to foreign policy. Just saying. And before we move forward, I want to go ahead and say this. What's going on in Russia right now, I'll tell you exactly. We're going to kind of revisit the overall endgame of what I think is really going on and what Putin really wants to do because, as you guys can see, yeah, hitting NATO is one thing, but I don't think that's the overall real true endgame goal. But we'll get to that more towards the end. And in reality, if you really and truly think about it, over the course of the 20th century, they've all actually happened under a Democrat's watch. Well, for the exception of the Gulf War and, of course, the Second Gulf War. But still, just figure I'd point that out. So, no, the Democratic Party is not the peace party. The right always gets blamed with that. But let's get back on point. So this article, and, of course, Morning Joe, what did they do? They obviously did what? They obviously ran cover for the Biden administration.
With House Republicans to lift the debt ceiling, his demeanor and command of the details seemed to shift from one day to the next, according to then House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
By the way, they also
who's quoted in
quoted
this
Mike
article.
Johnson, people around Mike Johnson, and admit that this was basically House Republicans whacking.
Why didn't they just ask Marjorie Taylor Greene
Well,
to
exactly.
weigh in?
Why did? Yeah, they could have
and
just.
Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, it's really shocking, especially when you see what Kevin McCarthy has said repeatedly, publicly, and behind the scenes about Biden on those same days when they were negotiating.
The strong feeling.
Okay, let me say this right quick before I fully answer back to this article. Joe Scarborough claims he's a conservative, and if you're a conservative, how the hell can you be rooting for what the hell is going on? Obviously, these people are fake, and Mika Brzezinski, she's got her own problems, but just look at that face. And this right here is just the face of a serious hardcore Karen who's spoiled, just extremely spoiled. I just figure I'd point that out before we go any further.
This article comes also because the context of this race and these two candidates, it's interesting. That's all I'll say. Anyhow, that flies in the face of what McCarthy said about Biden's effectiveness in the past. From Politico last year, quote, McCarthy mocked Biden's age and mental acuity in public.
In public, like he did in this article.
While privately telling allies that he found the president sharp and substantive in their conversations, a contradiction that left a deep impression on the White House. This from the New York Times. Privately, Mr. McCarthy has told allies that he has found Mr. Biden to be mentally sharp in meetings. And this from The Hill. Very professional, very smart, very tough at the same time. McCarthy told reporters at the Capitol of his talks with Biden.
You know, Willie, I could go on and on with things that Kevin McCarthy.
Okay, now that we done watched Joe Scarborough run his mouth about the whatever Kevin McCarthy said, let me go ahead and tell you right now, there's a reason why it is that Kevin McCarthy lost his job as Speaker of the House. Okay, there's a reason why it was that he was forced out. nobody trusts him outside of fundraising. He really truly wasn't good for anything. But still, at the same time, though, given what you guys have seen, given the fact that Biden, of course, has fallen in front of the troops, given the fact that Biden has fallen upwards going upstairs, I think it's pretty obvious at this point in time that this guy is obviously not with it. And with him not being with it, it's got people looking towards this guy here.
Highly conflicted, and I mean highly conflicted, judge, where there was no crime. It was made up, fabricated stuff. They didn't want to bring the case. They could have brought the case 7 years ago. It's only when you run for office they bring cases. But they would have done that 7 years ago, not in the middle of my presidential campaign, where we're beating Biden, by the way, by a lot. Did you see? And by the way, right after the announcement of this, more campaign funds were given to this campaign than any campaign, they think, in history. Almost $400 million. 400!
Claiming damn near $400 million in fundraising. Of course, I know over 100 of that's been kind of padded by Miriam Adelson's donation of $100 million. But still, at the same time, though, given the track record of people with money, and I'm not saying that money is the true indicator that somebody's going to win, but normally if you've got the most amount of cash, normally that right there is obviously a pretty strong indicator who's probably going to win. Also, not to mention the fact that Biden is doing fundraisers with Jimmy Kimmel and doing fundraisers with George Clooney. It looks like Biden's donors are good old-fashioned elitists, where most of Trump's donors are, for the most part, small dollar donations. But he's been getting some very, very big ones here recently, including this one in Silicon Valley, and Trump is actually set to go to Silicon Valley for additional fundraising. It seems to me that the money advantage, the tide is kind of turning and going in this guy's direction. Well, why might that be the case? I think this right here is the case.
About what Vladimir Putin said last night about this authorization of American weapons inside Russia. He said the supply of high-precision weapons to Ukraine for strikes on Russian territory is direct participation in this war. He went on to say that this is the way to serious problems, and again talked about Russia's nuclear capabilities. Does that concern you?
I've known him for over 40 years. He's concerned me for 40 years. He's not a decent man. He's a dictator, and he's struggling to make sure he holds this country together while still keeping this assault going. We're not talking about giving them weapons to strike Moscow, to strike the Kremlin, to strike just across the border where they're receiving significant.
I'm playing it for you guys again, the B-roll footage, for a reason. Look at Biden's facial expressions. Look at how feeble it is. Never mind the whole "I've known Putin for 40 years" comment. Putin was a KGB agent 40 years ago stationed in Eastern Europe. So it's possible that Biden had a file on him. But still, at the same time, though, just look at his facial expressions, his feeble nature. Just look at him. Seriously. Of course, if you disagree and you think that he's not competent, then you know what's going to happen.
Common Sense Department thinks the Wall Street Journal piece on President Biden's mental decline behind closed doors struck a nerve at the White House. The Journal spoke to 45 lawmakers, both Republican and Democrat, about whether Biden has lost a step. And as you heard, the consensus is yes. Common Sense is learning the White House was so concerned about the article, they called Democratic lawmakers who were interviewed and told them to call the Wall Street Journal back to give them additional pro-Biden comments. I mean, can you picture it? Hi, it's me. Did I mention President Biden is super with it? Critics say the liberal media is also concerned, saying the Morning Joe team on MSNBC had a meltdown. Common Sense disagrees. There was no meltdown. It was a good old-fashioned panic attack. Morning Joe talked about people they know people who know the president, and all of those people know that Biden is sharp as a tack. So is he sharp as a tack behind closed doors and only has trouble walking, talking, and remembering in public? Does Morning Joe not realize we see the president? He's out of the basement, mostly. Common Sense thinks it's only a matter of time before, 51 former intel officials start telling us the Wall Street Journal is Russian disinformation.
Don't believe your lying eyes. Basically, anything and everything, of course, is Russian disinfo. By the way, speaking of Russian disinfo, Hunter Biden's trial has just now started. And, of course, they're saying that most of his buddies are on the or most of his buddies are in the jury, so I'm pretty sure we kind of have an idea where this is going. However, the one thing that's came out since this is that the stripper he knocked up, London Biden, she claims that Hunter has not seen her child in 5 years except through Zoom call. I'm going to kind of withhold a little bit, not trying to make a political point there, but what I will try to make a political point about is this right here. Apparently what's been happening in this trial is that his brother's ex-wife, Beau Biden's wife, the one that Biden, quite frankly, thinks got killed in Iraq, when in reality he died here in the United States of a disease at home. Sad, but of course he didn't die overseas. He didn't die in Iraq. He died at home years after being home, away from the military, out of the military. Hunter, by the way, was rejected by the military. Of course, it's now been revealed that Hunter, of course, basically got this woman hooked on crack because Hunter is, in fact, a scumbag. Really quick, I'm not saying that Beau Biden's wife or first wife who decided to hook up or shack up with Hunter right after her husband died, I'm not saying that she's not terrible either. I just find it very interesting that the main highlight of the trial so far has been that his former is saying that he got her hooked to crack. Just saying. Which brings me to my final point about this situation. You see, people oftentimes get so insulated when it comes to issues at home that they forget about the broader picture. Now, really quick, I want to make this perfectly clear to you guys. I am 100% absolutely America first, but I'm absolutely 100% America first, as in putting the American people first. But I do believe that obviously the security apparatus, especially as a veteran like myself, I do believe that the security apparatus does in fact need to be, how do I say this? It needs to be upgraded, but also at the exact same time, I also think we need to be smart about it. You see, countries like, say, England, they've been with us the entire time. Canada, God knows what the hell's going on with Canada. Back when it was good, we could have a good relationship, and obviously be considered to be an ally. Same thing with France, same thing with Germany back in the day. But of course, after a while, some of these nations become, guess what? Freeloaders. They want our support way too much. Maybe because they're scared of Russia, but seeing how it is that, according to Joe, Russia has lost 350,000 men, which I find very staggering why it is that we need to keep sending money over there, because if that right there is the total amount of money that we're sending, then obviously we must be, I don't know, not needing to send any more money. Maybe Ukraine's got this. Oh, but then again, though, at the same time, though, Joe did also at the exact same time approve U.S. weapons to be used on Russia itself from Ukraine. He's going out of his way to create World War III. Now, some people are going to argue that Joe is not doing that, and it's actually the military-industrial complex that's doing it. And then some of that I will more than likely agree with you guys on. But the thing is this right here. We don't need to be in a war at this moment in time, and there's contradictions coming a mile away from this administration, and yet we've got people like Joe Scarborough telling us that Joe Biden is mentally fit, mentally competent, when it's pretty daggone obvious that he soiled himself, which, by the way, would not be something that would be uncommon given the fact that he's already done this once before in front of the Pope, of all people. I'm just saying that Joe's got a pooper problem. And if a man can't control his bowels, then a man cannot control his White House. And if a man can't control his White House, the man is never going to be respected on the world stage. But I did tell you guys there was going to be one last point that was going to be made, and this right here is what I want to make. The situation between Russia and Ukraine, we can go back and forth on how the situation got screwed up. We can go back and forth on how the situation started. We can go back and forth on how U.S.-Russia relations have deteriorated. In a lot of ways, they actually deteriorated even, well, they were already bad, but of course they were actually getting worse shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union because of a lot of the things that happened during the late 90s with Yeltsin involved. But still, the point is this right here. What was the overall end game of this entire invasion of Ukraine? Was it really and truly Putin's vision to hit Western Europe? Was it his actual envision? Did he envision ever possibly going into Poland? Did he ever possibly envision going into, let's just say, beyond Ukraine? I don't think so. I think that Vladimir Putin, for the most part, wanted Ukraine because he wanted the pro-Russian lands in Ukraine. He thought that obviously these were historical lands that belonged to him, so obviously he was going to do it. Now, I'm not saying I agree with him. I'm not saying I don't agree with him. I mean, he gave a whole, 2-hour some odd long spiel to Tucker Carlson over this, an interview that, quite frankly, I couldn't get through because it was so daggone boring. But also something else, too, that people need to understand. There's a certain portion of the world that people oftentimes forget about. Now, you think about the Middle East, what do you think about? You think about Iraq, you think about Iran, you think about Israel, you think about Syria, you think about Turkey, you think about Northern Africa. You think about those nations there. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Lebanon. There's an area of the country that people oftentimes don't think about. And what they don't think about are the nations that are north of Iran and south of Russia. What I'm talking about is the Stan nations. I'm talking about Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan. You're talking about Kazakhstan. You're talking about Uzbekistan. You're talking about a lot of nations, which, by the way, do have pretty strong Islamic caliphates, but also at the exact same time are very, very rich in mineral, and at one point in time allied with Russia. You see, I think this entire situation with Putin is a great big giant feint. I think that he's just nailing Ukraine, but he doesn't plan on doing a bigger operation west of Russia, except maybe over Kaliningrad. But I don't think he's willing to do that, especially given the nature or given the amount of men that they claim he's lost. I think the bigger picture for Vladimir Putin is to go into those nations east of the Caspian Sea. The reason why I feel that that's the case is not through dominating them, but mostly through treaty, through packaging. These areas are rich in minerals, they're rich in soil. And of course, it could come up with some form of trade agreement. And by the way, I've been saying for a while that whatever little partnership that Russia has with China is more than likely not going to last. And the reason why it's not going to last is because historically, these people actually don't like one another. There was a small allied ship or allied alliance that happened back in the late 40s and 50s, but eventually it deteriorated altogether. It actually deteriorated right before Stalin died. The truth be told is China and Russia, whatever alliance they come up with, is not going to last very long. I think the true end game of this entire situation, however, is not so much Ukraine. I think it's really the lands east of the Caspian Sea, but you're not going to hear too many people talk about that. So you guys can go ahead and consider that right there a completely, totally obscure take, but that right there is my take. However, the point is this right here. At the end of the day, we got a president that craps himself. He's not respected. And of course, the other guy, he's gaining steam. Fact of the matter is, this right here was in fact a shark that was heard around the world. And just like most sharks, people just ultimately just walk the hell away from the person who farted, leaving him alone, isolated. Learn to control your bowels. But then again, though, given Joe's age, it's kind of hard for him to do so. With that right there being said, guys, please tell me what you think in the comments section. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this right here. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Please share the video. The video that I have on the Greater Idaho thing has been posted. It's coming out tomorrow. This right here will be the first video of the day. I'm going to get 2 videos out. Obviously, I was not around yesterday. I was not able to get a video out. And I wanted to get the Greater Idaho video on Thursday, but things happened. So I had to make some adjustments. So make sure you guys stick around for that. There'll be another video coming out tonight, which will be about Dr. Phil's response to everything. So make sure you guys stick around for that. Like I said, please hit the like button, comment, subscribe, share the video, and I'll see you guys later.